everyone, welcome back to the channel. And in our previous videos we have talked about JavaScript arrays, an introduction. We talked about strings, and we also looked at other number of concepts in fundamentals of JavaScript. So in today's video we are going to look at JavaScript loops. So a loop is a control flow statement that allows you to execute a block of code repeatedly, and there are several types of loops in JavaScript. So we have a number of them, but the common one is a for loop and the while loop. So we have those two loops, and all others, they originate actually from these two loops, as we are going to see. So sometimes when you are doing a computation, you are doing it for a number of times. So for instance, if you are given an array of numbers and you are supposed to compute the square of them, okay, so you might be given an array of numbers and they want you to loop through those numbers and square them, or you want to go and square those numbers. So instead of doing one by one, you can actually loop through them and do them at once. Okay, yeah, so that is what you're going to look into this lecture. And then after the loops, we'll look at array methods in details. We looked at simple array methods, some of them, but after the loops we'll look at the most important array methods that are most commonly used in the JavaScript industry. So let's jump in. So let's start with a for loop. So the for loop is used to execute a block of code a specified number of times. So the syntax looks like this. So I always take my time to explain this syntax, but just know in this syntax you have a for. This one is, this keyword for is used to define or to start the for loop, and the for loop takes in three arguments. So the first argument is initialization, the second one is the condition, and the third one is the decrement or increment, and then the last one is what is supposed to be the code to be executed for each time. Now, to understand this concept, I will use an example. If for instance you had 8 plates, let's just create a scenario whereby you have 8 plates. I wish I could have like a diagram to demonstrate, but you can imagine you have 8 plates. I don't think I'm just going to draw 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you just say you have 6 plates. Okay, so on each of these plates you want to place a piece of cake. Okay, so like on each of these plates you want to place a piece of cake on each of these plates. Okay, so you can see this is a repetitive task. Okay, so you are going through from plate number 1 to plate number 6, giving out putting a piece of cake on each of the plates. Okay, so the first one, as you can see here in the for loop, so you can see that we started from number 1. Okay, so here the number of plates, so you initialize the number of plates. Where are you going to start from? You are starting from number 1. Okay, and then what is the condition? So you will keep on you will keep on giving the putting the cake, placing these pieces of cake until all the plates are exhausted, or until all the 6 plates are done. So the condition would be like until the plate number, okay, until the plate and number is less or equal, okay, until the plate number is less or equal to what? Is less or equal to 6, okay. So in this case, that is the condition. You are keeping on putting or placing the items or these cakes on these plates until you reach this condition whereby now you exhausted all the plates. And then this one, which is increment or decrement, so you can see we are moving from number 1 to number 6, okay. So that means we are actually incrementing. So each time we give from plate number 1, we increment by 1, we move to plate 2, we increment by 1, we go to plate 3. So you can see from here to here you add plus 1. So from here to here you add plus 1. From here to here you add plus 1, okay. So this is the scenario that you are doing. So in the first place, you initialize. So it's like, where am I going to start from? So you are starting from the plate number 1. So what is the condition? So you keep on checking, like if the plate number is still less than or equal to 6, increment, do this, put a slice of cake on the plate, and then increment to go to the next plate, like that. So let's just jump into code and we try to see how we can do this actually example in VS Code. So this time I've already created my index.html, and I also have my app.js, and I've went ahead and I connected my app.js. So I can just put here an alert. So let me just say alert, it's working, and I can just go ahead and run this open with the browser. So I want to, you could click also here go live, but it is, I just right like clicking here and open with live server, but it is actually the same thing. So I just want to confirm that my JavaScript is well connected, and you can see an alert is here, it's working, okay. So let's go to the console, inspect, and we are ever interested in the console to look at what is happening, okay. So that is great. I'm just going to remove this one. So we are on loops, okay. So I'm just going to here. So we are on loops, and the first one we are looking at is a for loop, okay. So number 1 here is a for loop, okay. So we said in a for loop, let's look at the syntax. So the syntax for the for loop, we said it is a for, and it takes in 3 conditions. So the first one is initialization. So you initialize, that is the first one. You give a condition, and then you increment or decrement depending on where you are going from. So if you are coming from number 8 to number 1, you could decrement, okay. So this is where we put our code inside the brackets, okay. So inside these brackets is where actually we place the code, okay. So great, that is good. So just do an example. So we already see an example of giving the plates. So let's say 4, okay. So let's just say plate number, so plate number equal to 1, So this is the starting point. We are starting at the plate number equal to 1. And let's just give a condition. So the condition is that the plate number must be less or equal to any place we want. So I just take 6. And now we want to increment plate number plus plus. Now in JavaScript, to increment by 1, you simply do plus plus. So what this one does, it gets the previous value and it adds 1. Okay, so this is how we are incrementing. So now here we put our code. So for instance, we could quickly console.log like plate number to see what is happening here. So if you go to the browser, you see that we have plate number from 1 to 6, and it is looping through giving the plates. So I can just say, for instance, I could write here, I could use to write here, and I say plate number. So plate number 1, you have received your cake. Okay, so if we are consoling that one, you will see that it is going to go through giving the cake or placing the piece of cake. And here we could go ahead and actually use an emoji for cake. It is window dot, so you place Windows dot and there is a cake here. Okay, so like so, and you will see that if we go back, it will put the cake on that plate. Okay, so that is basically the understanding of the for loop. Okay, let me in the description if you have not understood what the for loop, how it is done. But basically you have something you want to do, not necessarily you're supposed to be consoling.log here. You can do something here on this point here where we have put console.log. So you just do another one. For instance, if you wanted square numbers, okay, so you can just say 4. So here you can also use const, but you say let I. So I could just be any number, or but let's say number equal to 1. So you just have to from number 1, and you can just say for number less or equal to maybe 20. Okay, and here we could have num plus plus, and then we could get a square. Okay, so we could just say come here and I say I could come here and I say for instance a square. So const num squared, num square. So this is would be give me the number square here, and I don't want a square root, but I want to say num times like squared. Okay, and I could just go ahead and console.log num square, or the number square. Okay, so if we look through this, you will see that I have the squares. Okay, have the squares of all the numbers from 1 to actually 20. So for instance, 1 squared, from number 1 up to 20, you can see I've squared these numbers. So you not necessarily have to console.log, but you can actually do something with these numbers. Okay, you could do these numbers. You could even just go ahead and also do the if statement. Okay, So for instance, you could get here, you could just get here, and you only just maybe console.log num squared if it is only divisible by 2, for instance. So you could just even do like an if, okay. So if this number is the division by 2 is equal to 0, okay, we could just go ahead and console.log that number, okay. So we could just only get actually only even numbers, the squares, we get the squares, and we only just print out only the even numbers, and you can see that I only have the even numbers, okay. So yeah, that is you can do even the logic inside the for loop, not necessarily that you are limited only to do console.log or simple stuff, okay. So that is great. We are moving on. Well, let's just go to the next one. So we have talked about this one, what initialization does, what a condition does, and what the decrement and increment does. Okay, so and we have seen also a number of examples on the for loop. So let's move on to a while loop. Okay, so there is one for loop we are going to do at the end, but I just move on to a while loop. So the while loop is used to execute a block of code as long as a certain condition is true. So for the for loop is executing a block of code, okay, a specific number of times. That's why we're using less or equal to 10, and you execute for a number of times, though there is also a condition in that execution. But in the while loop, basically you have a condition, and so long as that condition is true, something will be done. So for instance, you have while the condition, do something, okay. So it is also easy. We can just do the same thing. We could just do the same thing here, like what you have done with a for loop, you can do it with a while loop. So the while loop is somehow different. So for instance, we could late. So for instance, we could just say late. So you start with so late students. So let's just say, so if I wanted the students, so assume I want to give the ID numbers to students, okay. So I just say maybe let a student number equal to 1, okay. So this is, we are starting with student number 1, and we could just say also do while, okay. So we could just say while student number, okay. So if for instance there were very like maybe 60 students in class, you could just say, let's just take a number like 10, a small one. So you could just say so long as while student number is less or equal to maybe, let's just say 20, okay, while the number student number is less or equal to 20, do something. So we could just concatenate maybe the student number. So we could just say const student ID number, student ID number is equal to, so we could just do a concatenation. So let me just say do this 0 0, and let me just attach here, do this, and we attach a student number here, okay. So we could just construct an ID number from the numbers. You could even just put maybe even your here the registration number or whatever you want to concatenate with, and we just only be changing one number, okay. So from there we could just go ahead and we say console.log student student number, student ID number, okay. Now with the for loop, you have to be very careful. Actually, most of the students, when you are teaching them, a while loop and even a for loop, you have to know that these are indefinite loops, so you don't have to mess up. More especially, it can actually freeze your computer if not crashing it. It can crash the computer if it is not proper run. Okay, I got one problem with one of my students. His laptop crashed and the problem was the while loop. Okay, so if you do a while loop like this, it will crash the machine. There is one thing you have to do. There is, you see, in the for loop, it is very easy because we are incrementing here within the same in this condition space. But here, first of all, the differences we have with the for loop. The first one, you initiate the counter outside the for loop, the while loop. The counter is initiated outside. You can see we have the student number outside. That is one thing. Two, that after you have done whatever you are doing inside here in the while block, you must remember to update the counter. So we have to do student number plus plus. Like, we must go to the next number, otherwise it will be an infinite loop. So because if the student number started from number 1 and you are saying student number less or equal to 20, if you don't increase it here, it means that we will never reach 20. We will remain on 1 and it will do it countless times until it crashes the machine. So you have to be very careful at this point. Make sure at the end you have this update counter variable here. You have student plus plus or whatever you are doing. Make sure you have this. If you don't have it, I cannot demonstrate it because it would have already blown up my PC. So just make sure you have this student plus plus there. So let's just go ahead and see what it is going to do. So the student number starts from 1, student number less or equal to 20. So we do this, then we increment here. When we are dealing with these loops, you have to be really careful, otherwise you may end up actually blowing up. I can see here it is good you actually keep on looking at your task manager, and you can see already VS Code and Google Chrome are having a problem here. Okay, and I can first put off this one though. Let me just go to Chrome and end task. Okay, and let's first analyze our loop here. So these ones, they are okay, and we can just first stop the consoling of this one. These while loops are big tasks, more especially like going through all these loops at once. They are big tasks, and you might need to first turn them off one by one. Okay, so let's just do again this browser and see. Could restore the session, and you can just go to localhost. This is 55 100. Okay, loops, inspect console here, and we have all these loops going on. So I want to first put off one by one. So for this one, we have seen this working, so let's put this one off by commenting it, and it is gone. I'm trying to reduce on the tasks the computer is doing. Even this one is working, we put it off. Okay, and then let's evaluate this one, the one we are on, the while loop. So we have the student number equal to 1 while student number, which is this one, is less or equal to 20. Okay, we could just select let's use let here, let student number, student ID number equal to this. So it is supposed to do this task, and we have here student number in increment. Let's see in the browser. Yes, okay, this is great. So you can see it has generated all the ID numbers for all the students. Okay, and this can be really just like printing them out or even sending them to a database, and you can see it has nicely generated all of them. So be careful. You can see it was freezing out my browser because there were many. It is doing all these loops. So if you are not having good RAM on the machine, it might actually bring you some kind of freezing in some point. Okay, so be careful with the loops, and I will always emphasize. So this is a for loop. So the for loop, the while loop, sorry, the while loop is different from the for loop. The first difference is that the counter is defined outside the while block. Okay, that is one. And then you put the condition, then execute whatever you want to execute inside, and end with the update counter variable. Okay, update the counter here, and everything will be fine. And make sure that the loop is going to end. Look at your condition you have given. For instance, you can't give, for instance, from here and you say student number greater or equal to 20. Like that one will never come to an end, and it will just going to freeze the browser and eventually crash the machine. Okay, so that is great. Let's move on. And now from while loop, they derived another one called a do while loop. So a do while loop is similar to the while loop, but the block of code is only executed at least once as the following code. So I find the do while loop is actually just the same as the while loop, only that you first execute the task here, and then you put the condition at last. So if wanted to do the same thing here, we have done using a do while loop. Okay, so this one, let me just comment this one out, and we can just let our student number remain that one, and we could just say do, and you do something while something. Okay, so this is the scenario. So what are we doing? We are doing this. So what are we doing? We are creating a student ID number. Okay, so create a student ID number and even move to the next number, and then you put the condition here. Okay, so you can see just a do while loop is exactly the same as the while loop, only just they change a bit in the syntax. What are you doing? While which condition? So you put the condition here, and then you put the block of code you want to execute inside a do loop, and it will produce eventually actually the same exact results. Okay, so that is a do while loop. It's just like they try to write the while loop in some other way, so you can try using a while loop itself, or you can do a do while loop, but I find them exactly the same. only that just here is just trying to make it sound like English, more of English. Do this while this. Okay, so that is great. Let's move on to the next one. So we have seen a do while loop, and so they just do the for in loop. So the for in loop is not much necessary in day-to-day life. If you had to do like practical JavaScript, we don't normally use a for in loop, but a for in loop is used to iterate over properties of an object. So if you have an object, say you have a person, you can go through all those properties in the person and you can print them out. Okay, you can just go and get all those properties and print them out. We could go ahead and do actually an example just to demonstrate that one. So here let me say for in loop. Okay, so the for in loop, you have something like this. This could be const or whatever. So you have a person object. So this is an object. This person is defined by the name, age, and job. Okay, so you could just do a for in loop. Okay, you could do a for in loop to loop over the properties. Okay, like if you wanted to go through all these properties, then you could just say for, and it uses the in keyword. So at this point you initiate or you define a property in this loop. So this one gives you access to a property like this one. So you can see this P is a property here, and you could also use const or let. So and even var is also okay. So you could just say var property in person. So you are trying to access a property in the person object. This is what it means. So you have the person, you could go ahead and print out the person, which is this object, or you can even access all the properties. So here he's saying property, and you can concatenate, of course, this to see the this property here, like the key and the value. So the prop is name. So person prop accesses John. So if we go ahead and do this, you can see you have name, age, job as that. Okay, I don't know if you have got the concept, but we can do one more example. Okay, so just say const student. Okay, so student can be an object, and the student has a name. Okay, John. He has ID number or reg number, actually reg number, and could be for sure like something like ADB 2020 2002 stroke 002 whatever. And we could just also say course. Okay, so the course is doing Bachelor of Science in Business Admin. Okay, and has retake. So you could have something like that, has retake, and could be false. Okay, so this is a student object, and is defining some few properties of this student, like the name, registration number, course, and has a retake property. So you would want to go through these properties. So if you wanted to go these properties under normal circumstances, of course you could say, for instance, const student name, and you would say student, you would access student.name. Okay, you could use student.name like so. And if we console console.log student name like that, if you console.log student name like that, you could see that you actually have John. Okay, on line 50 you could see that on line 50 you have John. Okay, but instead of doing one property at a time, consoling one property at a time, you could, okay, you could use what? You could loop through them. Okay, so doing this one, you could loop through them, and we loop through them using a for in loop. So you say for, okay, so let property, you can just go and say let a property in person. Okay, let property in person. So this one is accessing a property value. Okay, is accessing a property value in these students. Let me just cut this, bring it down here. Okay, so it is doing this. So this is a student and has these properties. So I want to go through all these properties one by one. So this property is accessing this one, and this one is the object whose we are trying to access. So instead here is student. So this is a property we are trying to access. We are trying to loop through the properties. We are accessing the properties of this student object, and we could just say, for instance, console.log. We could go in and say console.log, of course, property. And here you don't have to worry about incrementing or doing anything really, and it is taken care of. And you can just see here, and you can see actually you have the property themselves, not the values. Okay, that is great. You have seen that. Let me first remove this one. Okay, so you see you have access to the property like name, reg number, course, retake. So if I need to access their properties, you could of course console property and student property at that point. So for instance, we could create here const, okay, const student, yes, say const, just create an array. So for instance, student array, and in this student array we want to put in only his values. Okay, and we could just create it as an empty array just like that. So here we could just say student array dot push student. If you remember the array method is, we have this method called push. Okay, so you could push in student property. Okay, we could just say student, we access this student object and we push in the property. And at the end of the day, if we say console.log student student array, this one, you could just see that now we have actually an array having all the values of this person. You can see, and this one can open a number of things. You can do a lot of things when you have converted it into an array. So you're just being creative with what is possible. So for instance, if you have an object and you wanted to do something with this object or extracting this data and you want to manipulate it maybe in a more creative way, you could extract it from the object here, put it into an array like this one, and you can now work with this array. You can do a lot of things with this array. You get the things that you would have not done maybe if you are just accessing the object itself. Okay, so that is great. This is the for in loop. I think this one is we have really exploited it. So and I think the last one is the for of loop. So the for of loop actually is a new one, and it was brought in year 6. So the for of loop is a modern way to iterate over values of an iterable object such as an array or a string. Okay, so you could have an array. Okay, you could have an array, for instance, yes, like here, I think there's an example here. So you could have like numbers and you wanted to get maybe the square root or anything. So you could have numbers here. Okay, so you access the way we did like in the for in loop. Okay, so I say const numbers. Okay, and we could have an array having numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to whatever. We'll just do this and see we are up to 13. That is okay. So you have numbers up to 13. So and also there are many other ways to loop through an array. We are going to see it in array methods. There are better ways of looping through an array, but one of the methods you could use is the for of loop. Okay, so you could just say for and you initiate a number. So for instance, for a num of numbers. Okay, and so I think they copied the Python way of doing it. So the for loop of Python looks like exactly like this. Okay, so let num. So num, it is accessing actually a number in this array. So this one is the array we're trying to access, or the iterable. And there's a reason why they call them iterable, because not only arrays are iterable, even strings are iterable. So you could just see something when you say num is actually accessing the way we are using here property, that it was accessing a property in this student object. Even here when you say num is actually accessing a number or is accessing an item in this array. So if you just say only just console.log num, you said on the console you will actually have those numbers up to 13. Okay, and this is very creative. You can do anything now with these numbers. Okay, you can do anything with these numbers. You can find the square root, you can square them, you can do anything. Okay, so we could just find the square root. So we could just say square root of only maybe multiples of 3 or only even numbers. So if I wanted to find, for instance, only to square if I wanted to square only the even numbers, I would first do an if statement here. So if num, so if the division of num, okay, this is how we determine the number is a prime, is an even number or not. This one means that the division of number by 2 has a remainder of 0. If you divide this number by 2 and you get a remainder of 0, that means it is going to be an even number. And here we could now go ahead and find a square, or we could just say console.log and we console.log num squared. Okay, like **2. We could console.log that, and else you could just print out the number itself, or we don't do anything. So if you just do that, you will see that it's going to output actually the square of only even numbers out of that. Okay, so that is great, and this for of loop, I like it. It is short and very clear. If you look at it, it is very clear and it is very short, irrespective of all these other ones. Okay, so this is I like this. This is a very creative way of doing the for of loop, and it's actually more used than all others. Okay. Now there is one thing we can go and talk about is the break and the continue statement in loops. Okay, so what are the break and the continue statements? So the break statement is used to exit a loop prematurely. It can be used in any type of loop, such as while loop, for loop, do while loop. When a break statement is encountered in the loop immediately terminated and the flow moves to the statement following the loop. So for instance, what this one means, for instance here, let's look in this example. So you have a for loop here, which is saying from I equal to 0 for I less than 10. So this one we have seen, it is we understand what this one means. This for loop will actually just move from counting from 0 up to 9. Okay, but he's saying here if I is equal to 5, okay, if you reach on I equal 5, break. And then now outside here is having console.log I. So if you do that, I'm just going to copy this example here the way it is, so that I explain to you what is happening here. So here I'm just going to put here break and continue keywords. So what do these words mean? So there is one thing here missing. For this, so this one, what could be the problem? Unreachable code detected. Okay, so this one will not even be executed. You can see they are saying because they are stopping here on this break. Okay, before that, let's just do console.log to understand what we are meaning. Okay, so if we had moving from I equal to 1 to I equal 9, and this is just a normal for loop that is counting from I equal to 0 to I equal 10, and if we did that, it would just print from 0 up to 9. Okay, that one is okay. But if you go ahead and put a statement here before, and you can see JavaScript is very clever enough to detect for you that there is this one causing the problem. So you can see if we said if I is equal to 5, break. So what is going to happen is going to first go for I equal 0. So I less or equal to 0, it is, this is true. So it will move to the next, it will come and ask this if I is equal to 5, is this true? No, this is not true. So it will console.log I until I is equal to 5, and it will actually break and it will stop there. So if we just do that, you see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it breaks when I equal 5, it breaks or it terminates the loop. That's what it means. So the break keyword means that it actually terminates the loop if there's a certain condition you have put on it. Okay? So we also saw this keyword in the switch statement. During switch statement, we saw this keyword break. So even in the loops, we use it. So if, for instance, you want only to find, maybe you might be looping through a for loop, maybe you have an array and you are looking for a defaulter. Okay, you are looking for a defaulter, and let's say you have a defaulter, so let's just say const. Okay, you might be just say const bank balances. So bank balances, you have an array having these numbers, maybe 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and you have maybe also 1 million or 100,000. Okay, so this is the numbers, and maybe you only want to find a person who is having we could even go ahead and put one number that is negative, like negative 10,000. Okay, so you might have an array like this, and you are trying to find one thing here. Maybe you're trying to find a person who is above 100,000 and you give him a discount. Okay, so you could look through for this one, and maybe you could use a for of. Okay, so you could use a for, so you could say balance of bank balances. Okay, and we could just say if here, and we could just say, for instance, if the balance is less than 0. Okay, if the balance is less than 0, first of all, we could just console.log that balance. Okay, we could console.log that balance, and here we could also say, for instance, console.log maybe balance is above 0, just like that. So maybe you are looking for a defaulter who has actually a balance of negative value. So if you do that, you'll see that, you see here you have 4 of them saying balance is equal to 0, and then you have a 10k at the last one, and they're saying the balance is 10, and it stopped there. You get, we could just break actually. So at this point you can console.log and then break, and let's put this somewhere. So let me put it somewhere here. Okay, like so, and you could just see that it just does 2 times, and it does on this, it prints out this one and it stops there. You get, so you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and it can go on and do that. Okay, so that is how you use a break statement. A break statement will terminate the loop, and it skips and it goes to the next thing outside the loop. Okay, so that is great. And the last one is a continue statement. So the continue statement is used to skip the rest of the current iteration of the loop and move on to the next one. It can also be used in any type of loop. So you see here an example. So you have a while loop here. So you first define you initialize outside the while loop. So while I is less than 10, I plus plus, so is increasing here, and is saying if I percentage, that is meaning if the division of I is equal to 0, then just continue and console.log I. So what this one is going to produce is going to skip all the even numbers. Okay, so let's just go and see this before we conclude. We are about to finish this video. So you initialize the loop using var equal I, here, and then you're like while I is less than equal to 10, okay, I plus plus, you have to have this condition as I've told you. You must increment, and so you say if it is not divisible, or if it is divisible by 2, continue. And you see I've used the word continue. What it means that it will skip that I which is divisible by 2. It will not console.log it. Okay, so if you just go here, you said it is consoling 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. It is skipping all the ones that are divisible by 2. So continue means that you skip it. That's what it only just means. Okay, and that is great. And our JavaScript loops stops there. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can share the content with other people so that they can learn, and you can also like the video if this is something that is working for you, so that you can keep on supporting. And you can also join our WhatsApp group so that you can get exclusive interaction with you can get exclusive interaction with the instructor, and even ask your questions there in the group. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.